So there's two questions here, really. Is there a consensus on the status of simultaneous causation in philosophy? And is there a consensus on the status of simultaneous causation in physics? The answer, I think, is no to both questions. So I'll try to elaborate a bit here. First, there's no consensus on simultaneous causation in philosophy. But this is hardly surprising since there's no consensus on causation in philosophy. Causal reasoning is widespread in science and philosophy, and there's a good deal of agreement about what counts as good or bad causal reasoning in specific disciplines. But if you dig deeper, you'll see that while there's a general agreement that causation is a relation of some kind between things we call causes and things we call effects, there's no agreement on what causes and effects are fundamentally, or what the causal relation is fundamentally. You can carve up the various schools of thought in a variety of ways. Your basic intro philosophy lecture on causation will probably start off distinguishing two broad camps: Humeans about causation and non-Humeans about causation. So Humean theories of causation are inspired by the 17th century Scottish philosopher David Hume's analysis of causation. He argued that when we say that A causes B, we're saying that whenever events of type A occur, they're always followed by events of type B. But for Hume, this is just a way of labeling a certain kind of regularity in the patterns of observable phenomena. Most importantly, he interprets the necessity of causal claims, the feature of a causal relation whereby A somehow necessitates B, as a feature not of the world itself, but of our psychology, about our learned expectations built up through repeated observations of B following A. Now, when I call a theory of causation a Humean theory, I'm not saying that it agrees with Hume's analysis of causation. What I'm saying is that Humean views have a certain family resemblance that shares certain features of Hume's approach. What they share is this: Humean views want to keep the analysis of causal relations at the level of patterns in observable phenomena, or at the level of our theoretical representations of the world. And they shy away from talking about causes or causal laws in metaphysical terms as part of the furniture of the world. Now, non-Humean approaches, on the other hand, embrace the metaphysical path. They want to identify causal relations with relations between properties or entities or processes in the world itself. They think there is a causal structure to the world itself, and the task of a philosophical analysis of causation is to identify the ground of this causal structure. For example, when Theophage says that every physical cause involves a transfer of energy, he's implicitly working in one of these non-Humean traditions. In fact, there is a respectable school of thought about causation that wants to analyze causal relations in terms of causal processes, and analyze causal processes in terms of energy transfer. This is sometimes called the conserved quantity theory of causation, since it identifies every causal process with the exchange of a conserved quantity. Energy is a conserved quantity in physics, or mass energy if you're being precise. So is linear momentum, so is electrical charge, and so on. Now, I don't want to endorse any of these views here. My point is just that critical thinking about causation requires that we know something about the landscape of alternative theories of causality that are out there. And we shouldn't be surprised that a question about causation, like can causes be simultaneous with their effects, will be answered very differently depending on which theory we're using. So coming back to simultaneous causation, let me give you an example. On David Hume's own account of causation, there can be no simultaneous causation by definition, since he defines the causal relation in terms of patterns of the temporal ordering of events, where events of type B always follow events of type A. Now, if you're thinking that this seems like a pretty cheap way of settling the issue, I'm on your side. But Hume actually has some other more substantive arguments against simultaneous causation. He argues, for example, that if effects were simultaneous with their causes, then you could never have a temporally extended causal chain. So if event 1, a cause, is simultaneous with event 2, the effect, and event 2 is a simultaneous cause of event 3, and event 3 is a simultaneous cause of event 4, then event 1 and event 4 at the end of that chain are also going to be simultaneous. And so will any event, no matter how far down the chain. So it seems that on this view, every causally connected event is simultaneous, and no event can ever be causally connected to any event at any other moment of time. But that seems like a crazy result. For Hume, the possibility of a temporally extended chain of events actually rests on his belief that time is atomistic, that it has a smallest indivisible unit, and time intervals are made up of sequences of this smallest unit. I mention this because I want to come back to it later when we talk about simultaneous causation in physics, since this is an argument that actually needs to be addressed if we think that simultaneous causation is plausible.